And back to Caesar's civil war we go. Preruptus locus. So, it was like broken rocks on a cliff was the place. Erat locus. Utriqui ex parte. And from both sides, both parts of the sides, directus. This comes from dirigo, which means straight. Sometimes it can mean pointed, but really it's cliff-like. I'm guessing it goes with these rocky crags of up here. Ac tantum in latitudinem patibant. So the tantum here would mean merely or only. It would patibant would open up in width in the latitude. Ut, so that tres cohorts instructor. So 3 cohorts drawn up in their formation for walking, I'm guessing, or travelling, could explerant, which means could fill up eum locum, this place. And also so that, ut, nequi subsidia, there could be no help, subsidia is help or auxiliaries, submite from, could be sent from the lateribus, which are the flanks or the sides. It's going to take a possunt down here, which takes the infinitive. So that neither could any help or auxiliaries be sent from the sides, nequi, or nor could the cavalry, the knights, are able to be. We've got a double infinitive. We've got the infinitive there, and this one. Neither could they be in use to those labouring in difficulty, fighting probably. Ab opido autem, so however, or moreover, from the town, opido, the town is Ilerda, from the previous day's reading or so. A declivus locus, this is a decline from a place. Vergebat, vergebat really means to bend or to verge. Attenui fastigia should be from the peak or the top. There's a sloping downhill bit in longitude, so in length again. What do we have there? Latitude, and here we have longitude. Passum, which is miles. Curcata, around. So around 400 miles, there's a sloping downhill from the town, which bends or sticks out. Hack, adverb from to this place or this place, was a receptus, a fourth declension male, meaning the retreat. This was erat to nostris. So this place was a retreat for us. Quod eo, because we were incited or stirred on eo to this place by a studium, by a zeal or enthusiasm, and they had processerented. They proceeded this far, and we have a comparative rather inconsultius, without a plan or without forethought. Okay, so hack's the adverb for here, by this way, so don't get it confused with anything else. In Virgo, can be our daily dictionary word. It means to bend, incline. There's no perfect or supine. Verge or slope down. I'm situated at. Okay, so that's that explanation. Anyway, where were we? Hoc loco. So in this place, pugnabator, that's where the fighting was. There was fighting. And propter, because of the angustius, which is the narrowness, in equo, and because sub ipsus radibus montis, this is ablative going with sub. What is it? Abex de cum sine pro, take the ablative. Under the roots of the mountain itself, what they call the roots of the mountain, the bottom of it, these men had consideranted, they had halted there. Ut, so that nullum frustrum tellum, so nullum tellum means no weapon or spear, miteritor, which was sent in with the accusative onto them, which was sent against them, fell frustra, in vain. So the men had all halted at the bottom of the mountain, and it was a very narrow place, and so they were getting hit with a lot of spears. Tamen, nevertheless, virtute and patienta, by virtue and endurance or suffering, they nitabantor, they were shining examples, or they stood out, and they sustainabanted this neuter, all wounds. When we saw up here, it was loco and hoc. We also have this dative ablative inequo, which means it was unsuitable. So they got a lot of tellums thrown on them, and they fought back with a lot of endurance and virtue, and they took all these wounds. Augubator illus copia. So the copious amount of forces increased illicit to these people. And at Qui, from the castra, from the camp, there were cohorts per oppidum crebro submitted. So they were submitted, or they were sent out, crebros frequently, through the town, but so that the integri, the people who were whole, they succeeded onto the defessus, the tired people. Hoc, idem, this same thing, Caesar, nominative, he was cogibator, he was forced to facere. So cogo is taking the infinitive. So that submissus in eundem locum cohortibus, we have ablative and ablatives. So that with cohorts sent into the same place, in with the accusative, they would receive the defessos, those his tired people. So both sides are replacing tired people with people still with energy. Hoc, this cum esset, when it had been modo in this way, in hoc modo, in this way, pugnatum means fought, continenta horas quinque, we have 5 hours, and it's containing 5 hours, continenta, so throughout these 5 hours it was fought in this way. Nostri, these are our men, were premerentored by this, they were pressed, gravius, rather heavily or seriously by the multitude of the enemy, and consumptus omnibus tellus, and having consumed all of their weapons, their throwing spears most likely, and ablative absolute, with their districtus gladus, with swords drawn, an impetum adversus mountain in cohorts faciunt. So they made their impetum, their attack, against the mountain in the accusative again towards these cohorts. Ablative absolute, with porcus dejectus, with a few of them cast out, the reliquos converterated se cogunt. So cogunt's taken the infinitive. So the reliquos, the remainers, were forced to converterate, turn their backs, I'm guessing. Submotus submurum cohortibus. So the cohorts have been submotus, were moved. Sub can take the accusative or the ablative. When it's accusative, it just means up against. So with the cohorts moved up against the wall, and non nullem part, and some part, propter terram, on account of terror, compulsus, this is the same as the submotus cohortibus, they were forced, on account of this terror, into the oppidum, into the town. Faciliest, and there was easily, nostris tuas, datus, given, the receptus, which we saw up here was a retreat, fourth declension. Equitatus autem noster, so moreover, noster our equitatus, our cavalry, from utrequi latere, from both sides or both flanks, etsi, though dejectus and inferioribus locus considerate, so although they had halted, cast down and in a lower place, rather lower place, Tama, nevertheless, summa in jugum virtut conitur. So they did some striving to the top of the ridge line, the jugum's the ridge, with their virtue, with their valour, and interduus acis, between two battle lines, two lines, they were per equidings. Means riding a horse. Commodiorem, comparative, and tutiorem, another comparative. They gave a receptus, a retreat to our men, which is more convenient and safer. Okay, so that's what the cavalry were doing. Ita, so thus or so, vario curtamine, with various contesting or fighting, pugnatum est, it was fought. Okay. So nostri in primo. Nostri, plural. Our men in primo congressu, in the first congress, the first clashing of the battle, the first contest. Circada, around 70 of our men cacideranted. That's a repetitive perfect. They fell. In these, in his, was Q Fulginius from the primo hastato legionis 14. So the first legion has more men, and therefore he commands more men. Okay, Hastato is a kind of spear. Okay, So this guy here, he fell from the first legion of the 14th, who propter on account of his eximium virtutum, which is a special standing out kind of virtue of valour, ex inferioribus ordinibus, from the lower ranks or orders into eum locum he reached. Often it takes an in or an ad per venerate. So he reached this place, and then looks like he's one of the men who's dead. Vulnerator Amplius DC. He was wounded more than 600. Ex Africanus from Afrianus's were interficantor, was killed Titus Cacilius, a Primapillian centurion. It's a very important sort of centurion. And praetor besides him, 4 centurions and soldiers, Ampulus 200, and more than 200 soldiers. 47. Said Hake, but these things, pre ferto opinion, the opinion bore or carried off of this day, was that utriqui say that each of these sides existed entered. They thought, taking its head verb, taking his vim, they had discessed, they had left superiors. Come off better, they come off superior, each one side thought. Afrianani, the Afrianian men, the men under him, quod, because we'll say, cum esse, when omnium judicio inferiors, when they had seemed inferiors out of all of these in judgment, judicio, with adverbia, cominius, hand-to-hand fighting for tam dui for so long had statisen, they had stood off for so long in hand-to-hand combat, and the impetum nostrorum and the attack of us, or literally our attack, they had sustained, they'd sustained, and initio, in the beginning, locum is a place, they had tenuisset, they had held on to the tumulum, which is a mound or a hill, so they'd held this hill, which was the place which they'd initially had, quae, which causa pugnanda, which had caused, it was the cause of the fight, furat, it had been the cause pugnandi. And nostros, our man, ablative, primo congressi, when they're first clashing together, had cogisented, it's like the third time we've seen cogo today, taking infinitive, and forced our nostros, our men, to turn their turga. Turga is an adverb for back, so if you're turning your back, you're running away. Nostri, plural, our man, or tem, however or moreover, so however our man, quod, because in equo loco is a disadvantaged place, and impari numero, there was an uneven number of men who would congressi, who would come together, for quinque horas, of 5 hours they had sustinueted the prolium, the battle, and because a montem, the mountain, in the accusative, gladus districtus, with their ablative absolute, with their swords pulled out, waving them, brandishing them, they had ascended the montem, which is the mountain. So they'd ran uphill, fighting with their swords. Quod, well, I'll take that as because again, from loco superior, from a higher place, the adversaries to turn their back. Cogisent, that's like the 4th time. The adversaries have been forced to turn back from a higher place, and in opidum compulescent, they had been compulsed into the town. They've been forced to go into the town. Illi, they, eum tumulum, that hill, pro quo pugnatum, for which this has been fought, these wouldn't be the Caesar side, be the other side. They immuneranted, they fortified it, magus operibus, with great works, and they posuited ibi, and they placed there a presidium, which is a garrison. And that's it for the day.